If you listen to the show, you already know that we cannot exist without our sponsors. They are the ones who make things happen behind the scenes. So let's acknowledge Fuji Sports. We've been working with these guys for a while now, not only as far as this podcast is concerned, but also at the RŌL Academy. We've had their gear. I personally use their gis. What a phenomenal product.
Yeah, I mean, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, MMA, tape, bags, anything you need for your Jiu-Jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Let's talk RŌL TV. There's so much content on there. It's ridiculous at this point. But I think what is even more intriguing, as time went on during the project, we've been recording most of the events that were taking place here at RŌL Academy. At this point, I mean, we have guys like Chris Howder, Armin Fati, Rafael Lovato Sr., and Pete the Greek. I mean, there are so many different events that we've kind of recorded it. Don't you think that's amazing? I mean, points of reflection and kind of going back for all the students to see what really happened and refresh their memory.
Yeah, I think it's great, you know, being able to go back and look at all these high-level practitioners, Octavio Cudo, like one of the names you didn't mention. And I mean, just these guys that have been doing this for so long come in, teach these amazing seminars and workshops, and it's all recorded and there for you to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get additional savings on all this, type in code RŌL Radio at the coupon and get additional 30% off of your membership.
Nice. Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. This ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. Today's guest focuses on BJJ for the older grappler and grapplers with physical limitations, having an open mind while training, the myth surrounding black belts, and more. Here is the RŌL Radio with Jiu-Jitsu instructor and creator of Old Bastard BJJ, Mike Mahaffey.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live. Mike Mahaffey with us today. Mike, how are you? Great to have you on the show. I feel like I have one of the OGs on the show.
Oh my goodness. Old, for sure. Definitely old. I don't know about OG, but definitely old, sir.
So
Thank you for
the
having
O
me.
out of the OG. The G didn't come yet.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. Well, thanks for joining me today for this conversation. I'm actually looking forward to it. I've been following your social media and just, philosophy of Jiu-Jitsu for quite a bit. And the Old Bastard Jiu-Jitsu is quite present all over out there, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes. Yes, sir. Yeah, no,
it's a real thing. It's like a real thing.
It is a real thing. Yeah. It just, it's not just a silly name. It's definitely a real thing.
What do you think? Why do you think that happens? Why do you think at some point of our jiu-jitsu journey, career, path, however we want to frame this, at some point, I think all of us, we start looking at this as wait a minute, this old man jiu-jitsu, this old guy BJJ, this old fart thing, it kind of becomes reality. I have to reconsider all of the inversions and flying things, and and by default, I have to accept all these aches and bruises and all the other things that I feel like the scale shifts to the opposite side.
Right.
Why do you think this happens from your experience?
Well, I mean, I think for two reasons. I think the first reason you just alluded to, like, we're just getting older and we're getting mileage on our bodies, and depending on when you started jiu-jitsu, you may have had a lot of mileage on your chassis from whatever you did before, right?
Yeah.
And certain ways of training, certain ways of being on the mat just aren't sustainable. In jiu-jitsu, unlike other sports, I think, that one might play in school and high school, college. It's something that people just typically don't just do for a few years of their life and then abandon. It becomes like this passion or this lifestyle or an activity that we want to carry with us into old age. And you can't train like those 20 somethings do when you're 40, 50, 60 and up. Like the body just doesn't do it. So that's one reason, I think. And I think the other reason is it's super effective and efficient to roll like that. Like
some
it
of the
works.
younger guys might disagree with you, but
Well, have one of their 40 plus training partners pressure pass and nice and slow and grindy, and we'll see whether they agree or not.
would you agree with this old man jiu-jitsu, old bastard jiu-jitsu as you call it, is relatively new thought in jiu-jitsu community? And let me kind of pivot this in the sense of, I mean, I remember like it was yesterday, the OGs, even the second generation, like, I mean, taking it for Chris Howard or even Tom DeBlas, doesn't matter which generation we're looking at, they were all showing some of the cool stuff. And now this old man jiu-jitsu is everywhere. Like you just Google it, BJ Fanatics or whatever you want to go. It's like everybody's doing the old guy stuff. Would you agree this is fairly new or recent thoughts that surfacing within the community?
I don't think it's new as in people are just inventing it, obviously, but I think we're going through a phase where it's becoming normalized, where it's becoming more popular again. Like when my first, well, not my very first jiu-jitsu training experience, but in 2006, when I first got back into jiu-jitsu and started doing it seriously, my first mentor was a Hickson guy. Had been with Hickson for decades already, and that was all I learned from him was this. And then some people didn't really ascribe to that style of jiu-jitsu, like it wasn't flashy or athletic or it moved too slow or whatever. But I knew, like, from having felt this, back then, I knew like this is the real stuff as far as I'm concerned. This is the stuff that I'm going to be able to do forever, and this is the stuff that really seems to work for me. So I don't think it's new in terms of like it just got invented or just sprung into existence. But I think that it's becoming popular again. And I think that's because a lot of the same people that, all those years ago kind of told me, oh, that would never work. That's not good jiu-jitsu, are getting older and being like, oh, I can't train like that anymore. I can't do those, inversions and, all that loose, fancy outside passing that takes a lot of athleticism. So
do you think it's that, or is it more the fact that this part hasn't been monetized yet, and now some of these guys who have done all these instructionals and other things and presented their style, now they have evolved into this slow, more pressure passing, a little bit more space awareness, and now they are trying to monetize on this?
That could be it. That definitely could be it. I also think that in terms of fads in the martial arts, I've done martial arts since I was a kid. Haven't done jiu-jitsu since I was a kid, but I've always been training since I was in my early teens, and I've seen like fads come and go, right? Like this is the hot new thing, and this is the
shiny object,
yeah. And BJJ after UFC 1 became that shiny object. And then, I'm actually starting to see it swing the other way where people are talking bad about BJJ in other circles. And so, it could be the monetization thing. It could be that these OGs are starting to put stuff out there and try to make more of a living with this style, but also could be just the swing of the fads. I don't know. I fell into this, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I wouldn't imagine that somebody like you would have reached out to me to want to talk to me. So I'm still trying to figure out why this is popular.
Well, I think because it's such a young age of jiu-jitsu, if you will. I don't know if but it hasn't been around for that long.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things, this is pretty recent. All of this, just a few decades, right? I think we all going through this discovery, and these waves. Some of them I experienced for very, very first time. So like sometimes I feel like that we don't even know how to react to it, and we don't know what is going to be next, and how is it going to all of this is going to unfold in a sense.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree. How long have you been training? Do you mind if I ask?
I started in 2000.
Okay. Yeah. So you're one of the OGs too, my friend.
No, I'm not an OG. I'm just like, listen, I say this all the time. I was just too stupid to quit. Okay. I just hung around for long enough.
What does Chris Hodder say? It's not who's good, it's who's left, right?
Right. Absolutely. It's just, I was just too dumb to walk away from this crazy thing, and I'm still here, and it's
same.
But isn't it beautiful how this activity that we started way early on, it's still here. I was just having a conversation with somebody else about this, and you don't see a lot of swimmers who do such an active activity 2 decades later, or CrossFitters who compete 2 decades later of training. I feel like most of the sports have this dip of time, or this point of end, in a sense, where we no longer do this and we move on to something else. And jiu-jitsu is one of those rare ones where it kind of can continue on for a while.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's been my experience too. Like I talked to you about, I trained other martial arts, and I don't do any other martial arts right now, because I honestly think the reason jiu-jitsu has such a long shelf life is because of its adaptability. Mm-hmm. You can adapt it to your body and who you are and what your strengths and your limitations are. I think better than any other combat sport or martial art I've done that's out there, right? Like I'm too beat up to do a lot of the other stuff I used to do. Like I'd be probably in a wheelchair if I did some of the other things that I used to do, right? But jiu-jitsu, I can continually adapt it and find ways to make it more efficient. I'm not spending as much energy to get the same job done, and just easier on my body, right? Like you don't need to invert to retain guard. You can, but you don't need to, right?
I feel like I've been trying to say this to all my students. You don't have to go berimbolo. You don't have to fly to submit people.
Right. I mean, that stuff is fun. Like I'll admit, it's kind of, because I think if you're not having fun in jiu-jitsu, why keep doing it, right? So
right.
If you enjoy that and your body can do it, that's great. Like I don't own the gym where I train, and I'm not, the main coach, but we just finished a couple weeks on berimbolos, and people were joking with me like, come on, Mike, you can berimbolo, and it was fun. Like it was fun to learn it and fun to figure out intricacies, but it's not going to be part of my game, right? And that's fine. So I mean, those things are fun, and if you enjoy them, great, go ahead and do them. But it's really like, I see the kind of jiu-jitsu that I want to have. I just want to pare it down to the bare minimum, pare it down to just enough to get the job done. And instead of like collecting more things, I just want to shave away everything but those fundamentals. And I think that for me is like the old style jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And that's what I want to do.
So what you telling me? So what you telling me? You're not doing berimbolo on the show while we filming, right?
No, sir. Are you hearing bones
Darn it,
breaking?
There goes my plan.
I know. Dear listeners, really want to hear the screams of pain from. My neck was hurting for the past couple days afterwards, so no more of that.
Fair enough. So you mentioned that you've been around martial arts for quite a bit. Let's go back in time for a bit. That's as I understand, Taekwondo, Kali, Samboxing, all that was part of your exposure at the fairly young age, teenage, right? Teenagers. How did you get introduced to martial arts in general? What was the first dipping point? Do you remember, what happened there?
Oh yeah, like it was yesterday.
Well, it was yesterday. You're not that old, right?
I know. My kids. I've got a almost 20-year-old and a 16-year-old daughters, and they'll say to me, "God, that was all the way back in the '90s." I'm like, what? The '90s was just last week. That music's still popular. What are you talking about?
they are talking about '90s like we talk about '70s. I mean that's kind of the thing, right?
I know. It's so disconcerting. Oh my God.
So how did it all start? What was first? Why martial arts, not soccer or basketball or whatever it might be?
I was a nerdy bookworm kid.
Oh, were you?
Oh yeah. I
define nerdy. I think there are levels of nerdiness.
Dungeons and Dragons, which I still play, which is no longer nerdy, which makes me so happy, right? Like my teenager, my 16-year-old's in the D&D club at her high school, and that's awesome. They didn't have a D&D club, and partially I was getting beat up because I was a nerd, right? Yeah. And so that was really it. That was really what started the martial arts. Like I had all these interests that didn't align. Now, for some of your younger listeners, for real, this was the 80s. So things were a little different back then. Like the bullying was not as, people were against bullying. The adults were against bullying, but like, I don't remember it being such a taboo, right? So I got bullied. And I did dance as well. So that was a killer. Like as a nerdy kid who played D&D and did dance. So picture that as a 12 or 13-year-old. And I had a friend in the neighborhood who did taekwondo, and I started talking to him, and he showed me a couple of things, and I was like, well, forget this dance stuff. That's getting me beat up on the playground, right? Let me do this. And if I remember correctly, my mom did not want me to do taekwondo, did not want me to do martial arts.
Why?
I can't. If she listens to this, she's going to be like, what? I did not say that, but I remember it distinctly.
We should just get her on the show and resolve this dispute right there.
I know, right? You want to see the old bastard get whooped by an even older lady? That would be it.
Yeah, talk about tough jiu-jitsu.
I know. I think because of the association with fighting, and she didn't know anything about martial arts, and so I got a paper route and scraped up enough money to get lessons at the local Y, and I was hooked, like, immediately.
What was so addicting? Do you remember?
Well, to like 14-year-old Mike, it was the feeling of finally having some a sense of confidence and a sense of power.
So the empowerment behind it.
Yeah, for sure. The empowerment, like I didn't need to make myself small anymore. Yeah. I could take up my own space in a room, and that would be okay, right? I wouldn't have to be afraid of doing that. So it was super empowering, and so I did that, and eventually, after a few months at like the local Y, like the feeder club, I went to the main school in suburban Detroit, and then I went to college, and I kept training in karate, and that's where I picked up some other arts too, and that's where I first found jiu-jitsu in the early 90s. My karate coach got the UFC. I believe he got UFC 1 on pay-per-view, and so we all went over to his house to have pizza and beer.
So you watching this live?
Yes, sir.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
See, most people, you might be actually a first person that I'm talking who watched UFC 1 live. Most people said that. Yeah, most people that, I don't know, but I'm trying to put this puzzle together, because most people are talking about like, I watched UFC. Everybody watched UFC. That changed my life and all this. But I don't think anybody watched it in '93 as like, I haven't watched it back then. I didn't know what UFC. I didn't know what jiu-jitsu was back then.
Yeah. Well,
so do you know what jiu-jitsu is? Like at that point of time, like do you have an idea what grappling is, or are you because you have taekwondo and karate experience, right? So it's primarily striking, right, and primarily an offensive kind of approach to martial arts. Is any idea what's happening on the ground? I mean, like,
No.
what's your exposure to that?
I had none whatsoever. None. So our coach, he had, and I stayed training with MSU Karate Club for decades. Like, even after I lived in Lansing near Michigan State University after I graduated, and my wife and I got married and stayed here in town, and I kept training with them forever because our head coach passed away about a decade ago. Was really like a big mentor figure to me, as a young college kid. And he was very eclectic. He had done boxing, he had done judo, but I had no clue of what the ground game was. So I remember watching this with my friends and, my training partners, and going, what the heck is happening? I have no clue what's this little guy doing?
Okay, you got to walk me through this. You got to walk me. And now I'm fascinated about this. So TV's on.
Right.
Hoist comes out, and obviously, you don't know who he is. I would assume, right, at that point.
No.
So
not
you're
at
rooting
all.
for the other guy, right? I would assume that is like, this guy's going to get demolished here.
Oh yeah, I'm rooting for anybody that's got any kind of striking. Because I didn't understand. Like, I knew what judo was. Like, we had a judo club at the university, and I was never interested in that at the time. And I mean, to be honest, the culture of the day was, judo's a sport, but it's not fighting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's why I switched to the karate club instead of continuing to do taekwondo, because we had a very eclectic, like, kind of hardcore way of training. A way of training that would not fly nowadays. There's concussion protocols nowadays. And,
right.
We didn't. And so I was really looking for something more effective, in my opinion. So, like, I knew what judo was, but it's like, oh, judo's just, they're going to grab and, we're just going to punch and hit, and that's going to be the end of it. Right. And so we're rooting for whoever's got striking, right? Like, Gerard Gordeau or Pat Smith or whatever. I didn't know who any of these people were, but they just go ahead.
But you completely, like, submerge into the striking game, and that's your jam, right? This is who you're rooting for. And then everybody's seen, I mean, most people, I would have hoped they've seen UFC 1. Fairly quickly, things go to the ground. What is your first impression? Because I think what is really fascinating about this whole story is that most of us watch this on the VHS or DVD, and there is a rewind button. For those of you guys younger generations out there, you watching TV live, that doesn't exist these days. Like, we are talking about, you can't rewind. You miss it. You went to the bathroom and you came back. There was no coming back to any of this. Like, you missed the show. So it goes to the ground. Hoist takes it to the ground. And what is your first thought? What's the reaction in the room like?
I think we thought back then that, like, whoever he took to the ground was going to be able to strike their way out of it. Like, oh, eye gouge and pull an ear and do all this stuff, like, as good as we were, because, we had a competition team. We fought all the time. We fought hard. We were young. We were athletic. None of us really understood. I certainly didn't understand what it was like to have a jiu-jitsu person or somebody who knew how to grapple on top of you like that, controlling you. Mm-hmm. There was this sense of, he's got to get out somehow. Like, it's going to happen. They're going to get out and he's going to start hitting, and that's going to be the end of it. And then it wasn't. And I immediately thought, like, my first reaction was, I got to figure that stuff out. There is a hole in my understanding, and I got to fill it.
So that's a brilliant approach to it. It's very mature, I would have to say, because many people at that point of time, that's a fluke. I mean, that's what a lot of people were saying. This is fake. This was staged, or what? Like, there were a lot of doubt behind what was happening, especially during the first one. After second or third, and as the UFCs went on, then everybody starts scratching their heads. It's like, okay, wait a minute, something is going on here. But your approach is like, no, wait a minute, we are onto something. We got to figure this out.
Right. Well, I mean, that's why I went from Taekwondo to the MSU Karate Club, because I went there, like I got my black belt in Taekwondo when I was 18 or something like that. And so I went to the university and visited a handful of the different martial arts clubs and went to the MSU Karate Club. And Bruce Henderson, the head coach, like I came from very formal Taekwondo style, right? So like I walk into the training room and I find out who the head coach is, and he was already 40 at the time or whatever. He was, an adult running he was like the adult advisor of the club or whatever. And so like I went over there and I bowed to him, and I already knew he was like a 6th degree black belt or whatever. So I bowed and I was like, "Oh, Master Henderson, sir, my name's Mike." And he looks at me, and can I swear in this show?
Sure.
Okay. First thing he says to me is, "Don't ever fucking call me master again." It's like, my name is Bruce, and that's what you'll call me, right? And so then I sparred with some of their guys, and as a black belt, I was getting the tar beat out of me by like yellow and green belts, right, from their club. Like there's just something more, like they were better. They had trained under more realistic resistance than I was used to, and so that was like my switch immediately. Like, okay, this is what I have to do now. I'm done with this other stuff. Like, but now I have to.
And that's karate only. We're not talking about any of the ground here, right? Is that correct?
Correct. So my point is, when I saw the UFC 1, I was already like, I had already been in that mindset of like, if there's something that I can't do or I don't do that can beat me, I need to figure that out.
I see. So that aha moment, in a sense of there's more to learn. There is more opportunities. I'm not on the top of the food chain, if you will.
Right.
Was way earlier than the UFC 1 event that you were describing a moment ago.
Yes. Yep. And so I felt like I had to be, as good as I could be. And so like, if you and I are rolling, Thomas, and you've got something I don't, I'm like, you have to show me. I've figured that out. That's awesome. And
I think that's one of the fascinating things. As I was getting ready for this conversation, I was listening and reading about you, is this continuous open mind about jiu-jitsu. It's very fascinating. And I think not a lot of people have that, and being hungry for information is so healthy for us as humans to continue developing. Let's finish the UFC 1 story. So yes, you watch this, you scratch your head, you guys sitting in front of that TV, and it's like, what the hell just happened here? This Brazilian skinny dude freaking mops the floor with everybody. And your thought is, I need to learn this. How soon after this moment you are introduced to jiu-jitsu?
Probably a year or year and a half. There was nothing in the Lansing, Michigan area at the time. And for your listeners, your younger listeners, there's no internet. There's no Google.
Yeah, we are talking 93. No.
Right. There's a phone book and word of mouth.
Yeah.
And, the martial arts, I still find the martial arts community smaller than you'd think, right? Especially in jiu-jitsu. You can find anybody and talk to them pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so back then we had a lot of word of mouth. So I can't remember exactly how I found out. Oh, yeah. I graduated, got a job at the local community mental health. One of the security guards that work there, who I'm still friends with now, did jiu-jitsu. And so I found out about this place. This is maybe a year and a half later. I'd graduated end of 93, or spring of whatever. I graduated the semester, whatever, after I saw UFC 1, and was out, working. And so I believe it was Scott Hahn who pointed me in the direction of this little gym in like an abandoned warehouse downtown. And so I went in there and immediately got the tar kicked out of me.
But wait a minute. you're almost bulletproof at that point. I mean, like, you know your stuff. I'm just saying that.
Not when I was grabbed.
But so are you telling me that this was another aha moment?
Oh yeah. Well, I went in there. The attitude, the jiu-jitsu culture has changed so much, and I know that you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Like the attitude then was, even though I went in saying, "Hey, I'm here to learn," it was like, "Oh, you're a karate guy, and you're coming in to this must be a dojo storm." Like, no. No.
I come in peace.
Right. So I trained there. What I think once people figured out that, and there was no real jiu-jitsu schools I could find, like, that only taught jiu-jitsu at the time. This school, they taught like Muay Thai and some Kali, and they had a jiu-jitsu grappling program or whatever. They taught it's basically MMA without being called MMA yet.
Right.
And so I trained there for about a year-ish. I can't remember exactly. And then I left because the culture was just not... This is Wild West Jiu-Jitsu, right? Like, people... These were all fighters, which I was fine with. Like, I wanted... There was no sport MMA at the time, right?
Right.
And so I had no aspirations of entering a cage or getting sponsorships, no tournaments even. Like,
Right.
I just wanted to learn how to scrap better.
Yeah.
And I found out that there were some very unsavory people there, let's put it that way. And I was kind of like, if that is... If the culture isn't being cultivated here in a way that makes me feel safe and comfortable, or that everybody's safe coming here, this is just not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Not jiu-jitsu, but that place.
So how long were you there before you decided to depart?
About a year, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so it can be easy. I'm just trying to visualize this. It can be easy to make the decision because a moment ago you said there's really nothing around. So it's
Right.
not like today where you say, oh, this doesn't fit me. I'm just going to go a mile down the street or whatever, on the other side of the town. What you're describing is, I'm going to leave. And do you know where you're going? I mean, do you want to continue this at that point?
I was open to continuing jiu-jitsu, but not open to doing it at that place.
At that
And
place.
I was still training karate as well. I was
Okay.
doing both at the same time. So I'd do 3 or 4 days a week of karate and a couple of jiu-jitsu, which I just considered like supplemental at the time. I had no thoughts that I was going to be like a jiu-jitsu guy.
Gotcha.
But I had to figure it. Like, I wanted to get as good at it as I could, but I didn't think I'd be sitting here talking to you about jiu-jitsu today, right?
Right.
And so I left.
You didn't get converted yet.
No, not quite yet. I probably would have been had there been other schools like today. Like, I would have just gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. But it was a totally different time. You whippersnappers out there, totally different.
What's funny about this, as you're talking through this story, is that when you were describing walking into that place and you're like, I'm in common peace, I instantly a story. I had Chris Howder on the show, and he was describing a story from his when he's walking home, and I don't remember which out of the Machado brothers called him, but he calls him and he was like, get back to the academy. There's somebody here you need to take care of. And he's like, okay, here's my bag. He walks back and here's another fight. I kind of visualize that this was the opposite side of the,
Yes.
You were the guy who walked in and they were gearing up. But anyhow.
Right.
Yeah. But life is very different back then. One, what you were describing is this still very much so taboo environment of jiu-jitsu where I feel like you're discovering that it works, but it's not as accessible, and your primary focus still remains with striking arts. Is that by choice, or because jiu-jitsu is not accessible?
Probably because jiu-jitsu is not accessible.
So at that point, you're noticing that there is some tangible ways that this could be productive and useful.
Yes, very much so.
Is there one specific event that occurred that you were like, wait a minute, like, I thought I thought I was the guy here, and this is kind of going against the grain. Like I'm not winning. This is not supposed to go this way.
Right, right. Yeah, being taken down and mounted and choked by one of the more experienced students. So like this is how I recollect some of my experience there, right? It was interesting because not every jiu-jitsu student there really knew how to defend strikes. Okay. So my gap in knowledge of what to do when I'm grabbed and on the ground, there was an equal gap in knowledge among a chunk of them, not everybody, a chunk of them that didn't know how to defend strikes.
Yeah.
So we would do this boxer versus grappling drill,
okay, which
you probably have heard of. One guy gets boxing gloves, and the other gets like some headgear and a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
And the boxer can only box, and the grappler can only grapple. And I remember distinctly some of the other folks at this school being like, "Oh, we're gonna take this karate guy down super easy. It's gonna be," and that wasn't the case. But then, of course, people who were more experienced at jiu-jitsu,
yeah,
like I was like a baby with them, right? So I remember like doing this drill and doing pretty good against the first couple people as the boxer, and then so this other guy comes in. His name was Dan, and I hear that he's out in California now, and he's like a 4th degree black belt or something. Like he was really good. He had judo experience back in the day. They called him the Anaconda. That was his nickname at that school. And I remember Dan just like slipping a punch and getting the body lock, and down I go. And there's nothing I can do about any of that. Like none of my strikes are applicable once that distance was closed. Like it was.
What's your mindset like at that point of time when that's happening? Do you recall anything? And like, do you recall, sitting there and like, crap, this is not fair, or maybe this shouldn't work, or like, how are you processing this information?
I remember, maybe I'm being too kind to myself, but I remember thinking, I want to be able to do that.
Okay.
Like, I want to be able to do this. I want this superpower, right? Like it feels like a superpower if you don't have it.
So this continues on. At which point in your journey you have this realization, this epiphany, where you say striking arts or traditional arts are fine. I love this. I appreciate this. However, my focus is shifting to here because this is really puzzling. This is really intriguing to me.
Right. When we had kids, when I had to choose.
Oh.
When I left that school, I took about a decade off of jiu-jitsu, still training, striking.
Okay.
But again, there was nowhere in
the area where it was accessible. Yeah.
And so my wife's family lives out in the Los Angeles area.
Okay.
And we were on a visit in holiday seasons, like December 2006. And my brother-in-law, her oldest sister's husband, he was the CEO of a Boys and Girls Club out there. And he says, "Hey, Mike, I know you're into this martial arts stuff. Have you heard of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I did a little bit of it back in the day." And he says, "There's a guy that teaches every morning, 3 mornings a week at the Boys and Girls Club. While you're visiting, do you want to see if I'll talk to him and see if you can drop in and check it out?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. That'd be awesome." And so I went in, and the guy's name is Craig Husband. And he was a police officer at the time, teaching mostly officers and federal agents. This little like semi-private club at the Boys and Girls Club at like 6 a.m, 3 days a week. And he'd been with Hickson since '88 at the time. And I went in there and just got I hadn't done jiu-jitsu in a decade. Like I had kind of practiced, like some of my karate buddies, I would show them stuff that I'd learned that during that 1 year or whatever, but I would no way say I was proficient. And what I felt from him, especially being of that like old school Hickson lineage, felt like even more magic than what I'd felt back in 94 or whenever it was that I like it was astounding to me that this person who is no bigger than me, probably a decade older than me at the time, and I was 34, so he must have been in his mid 40s or whatever, could control me like that, and I could do absolutely nothing. Like, I felt even more helpless than I did back when I did it the first time, and that was what flipped the switch for me.
So what happens after this? Are you on a hunt for
Yes,
jiu-jitsu?
I went on the hunt. I told my wife.
Do you still live in Midwest?
Yes,
As this is happening, so you're just visiting California. So this is complete coincidence, essentially.
yes, complete coincidence. Complete. So, I mean, I knew jiu-jitsu was blowing up, and, you know, being part of martial arts scene, I was, you know, I'd watched MMA, of course, and didn't have any doubt as to the efficacy of jiu-jitsu. Just there was nowhere that I really knew of in town that I wanted to train. Like that other school, I can't even remember if they still existed anymore at that time, but I wasn't going to go back there.
So what's the plan? You go back home.
So I go back home and I tell my wife I got to find jiu-jitsu. And
wait, how does that conversation go? Because I know 100 guys would ask that question, and I know what the result would be. So
luckily, Teresa and I, when we started dating at during college, I was already like martial arts was my thing. Like I was training like 6 days a week. I was, you know, that nobody got in the way of that for me. And not because I'm all macho and stuff. Like, compromises need to be made in relationships and families, and I totally get that. But like, it was set up from the beginning. Like, this is my thing. This is part of who I am. So when I said I have to find jiu-jitsu, I think my oldest daughter was maybe 1.5 at the time, and she wasn't even. Our daughters are 3 years apart, so she wasn't even pregnant with our second daughter. But I said that to her, and she's like, okay, and that's fine, but let's not take away from any more family time. I said, okay, that works with me. So, you know, Google was a thing, so I Googled jiu-jitsu near me, and there was this purple belt who had a school, you know, about 10 or 15 minutes away. And I signed up, and my first plan was, let me just do it for a few months. Just, I want to play with it again. I wasn't planning on quitting karate, you know, but I want to play with it again. But it was too late. I was hooked.
Let me ask you this before we move on with this story. You mentioned that purple belt is running the academy. What year is this?
2006 or early 2007.
So that's fairly recent. That's not that far ago. I mean, that's less than 20 years, right? So a purple belt is running academy. And I think this is the important part of this story is here. What is your train of thought on that? Because you come from very traditional martial arts, and not only one, but several of them, right? Black belt is viewed very differently in Taekwondo and karate than it's in Jiu-Jitsu. From a rank perspective, from an expertise perspective, and so on. Here, you don't have many choices. It sounds like there's one, and there's a purple belt. How do you process this in your mind? From one side, you are a black belt, you are an expert in something else, yet you're coming in and you're supposed to learn from somebody who's not.
They knew more than me, so I didn't care.
Really?
Yeah, I mean... I had there were no black belts. I mean, I didn't even know where to find a jiu-jitsu black belt back then.
I am with you 100% because I remember driving hours to do a seminar or a workshop with a purple belt. Like, I remember these days. But today, life is very different. And for those who listen, I just had another guest, and we were talking about how spoiled we are today. The amount of academies around, accessible, that's one. That's mind-blowing. 2, all information is available for free on YouTube. You want to pay and have more structured and a little bit more engagement, fine. But it's all available. And then the amount of black belts that are available today versus 20 years ago, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing, right? So for those who are just starting, framing this, you have black belts and success in the traditional martial arts. You come into jiu-jitsu after 10 years of break, and the only academy that's available is run by a purple belt. And your mindset is, he knows more than me. I can learn.
Yes, that had been instilled into me. I got to give credit to Bruse, my late karate coach. Like, that was really instilled into me by him. This kind of open-mindedness, this kind of, which, you know, when I say karate and then that in the next sentence, there's a lot of people that I know that would think that those are incompatible. But Bruse was a different animal. Like, I was still doing karate when I tried jiu-jitsu that first time, and I didn't have to have a conversation with him, you know, oh, sensei, teacher, can I please go cross-train in this other art? He was just like, cool. If you learn some good stuff, bring it back.
I mean, I appreciate that.
As do I.
That's very open-minded approach, especially that this is back then. This is not today. I think today we are a little bit more flexible on these things, but back then that must have felt good, that you don't have to jump over the hoops of politics and some of the nonsense that we see happening today.
Right. It was good, and I don't think when I was younger, like in my 20s, that I really appreciated that as much. Like, I didn't know what I had, you know?
Yeah.
I just thought that's the way it should be, right? That's the way it always, you know, it's the kind of coach I want to be whenever I was going to be a coach.
So how do you view these situations today? Not to get political.
Yeah.
But how do you view some of these situations today? It seems like your entire journey, your entire life, you're very open-minded about all of this. You very much so all about the knowledge versus who, how, where, and so on. There is a lot of vulnerability, I would say, that you put yourself in order for the greater good of inquiring more information to grow, to be better. You know, today I feel like we are a little bit more stuck, and it might be from being spoiled, but like we are a little more stuck in the ways. Like, you know, you can't train over there, you can't train over there. This is not. Don't do this, do that. Like, how do you view all that?
I mean, we're grown adults. Like, we can train, we can
kidding.
go where we want, right?
No kidding.
I mean, that's the only answer that's acceptable to me, right? Yeah. You know, I love to travel. I love to visit other academies. I'm fortunate that I've had this opportunity to be connected to people in jiu-jitsu literally from all across the world, through camps I've attended, through some seminars I've done, through all of that. And it's like, when I go visit another academy, I always want to conform to the norms and expectations of that academy, right? Like, you know, oh, we only wear white gis here, so I only bring a white gi. You know, yeah. We call the coach professor, and so I'll call the coach professor, whatever. But personally, for me and anybody that I train with, like, I'm just Mike. I'm not a professor. I don't have any hold over you in any way to tell you what to do outside of the mat. Like, I don't even have hold over you to tell you what to do on the mat unless you're being an unsafe jerk, right? Like, I'm a 52-year-old guy who happens to know a little bit about pajama wrestling. So,
well, there you go.
Right, that's it.
Where does this Old Bastard Jiu-Jitsu come from? Like, at which point you are noticing that, and I know you mentioned that, you know, old school Hexen-like style of jiu-jitsu was embedded very early on in your library, if you will.
Yes.
But at which point are you noticing that, you know, hey, I'll do too many berimbaulas and my neck is gonna hurt, or like this is not necessarily the most efficient way to do this. Like I don't have to move fast. I can move actually slow and be very beneficial. Like at which point this physicality and mechanics becomes priority for you because of the age that you are, moving forward through.
It actually happened really early in my journey because not because of me being so wise, but because I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when I was 35, 36. I was a blue belt. So I'd started training at that gym, met my friends Matt and Amy Linsmeyer, who also we all started as white belts together. They were dating. They weren't married at the time. And we left that gym after Matt got his blue belt because there were issues. We won't get into that. It just wasn't a great environment. And there were no black belts within 90 miles of where we were. Mm-hmm. And so Matt was traveling to train with one of the black belts 3 days a week because he could. And then we were coming back and training in his basement. And when we got too many people in his basement, Matt said, well, we need a location. So then Magic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was born, and I've been with them ever since. But I was also going back every 6 months or so to visit my wife's family and train with Craig. Mm-hmm. And getting like that old school Hickson-esque stuff. But I was still young-ish and used to being an athlete. And I just started to hurt a ton, like all the time. Couldn't recover from anything. Couldn't, and so at my wife's behest, I went to my doctor and got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which is autoimmune, right? Like arthritis just refers to the joint damage. Mm-hmm. The rheumatoid variety is because your immune system hates you and is attacking your joints. Mm-hmm. Among other things. So I had a ton of really bad injuries early in my jiu-jitsu career, like through bluish and purple. And
is that by choices that you make, or this is simply circumstances that your body is reacting to it?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
So you were a little bit of a meathead, huh?
A little bit. I don't know if meathead's the right word.
Listen, the only reason why I can't say this because I've said this publicly. I was a jerk when I was white and blue. Like, I was awful. There was my light rolls during my white and blue belts. Like, if blood was not drawn, we didn't spar. Like, it was bad. It was bad. I was a jerk. And so, I know there are guys listening who came up with me and they're like, yep, that was Thomas. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did have the rep. Matt he'll still tease me today. I did have the rep of being that guy who's like the less roll light guy, right?
Yeah.
Who would then not, or would, Michael roll light until he sees a submission, then everything goes up, But that's not me anymore. I am not that guy, So like I really had to choose from trying to be athletic.
Yeah.
I had to make a conscious choice because, I mean, if I didn't have RA, would I be where I am today with jiu-jitsu? Probably not, because I was really forced to like take as much of the athleticism out of jiu-jitsu as I could when I was training, or else I just wasn't going to be able to stay on the mat.
Yeah. So this brings us to an interesting point of this conversation. Jiu-jitsu is getting so popular these days. And I think what's beautiful about jiu-jitsu, and this is my personal view, is the fact that you don't have to be 20 to start. You can be easily in 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, my oldest student is 60s. And that's like, and it's this diverse approach to jiu-jitsu is so welcome. However, there's many out there who even perhaps listening to this conversation, they say, yeah, I'm 50. I don't move the same way. I'm not as flexible as all of you guys, and I don't want to start this. I don't want to put myself in these compromised positions. This is stupid. I would like to try it, but I'm not 20. What's your response to that? How are you thinking about this? You and I have been lucky that we started this a couple decades ago. there are plenty of other people who are sitting and listening to this who want to start it right now, but they're not 20 or 30 or even 40.
If you want to start it, you have to, and you're older or you've got some physical issues to work around. Well, I mean, this goes for anybody, no matter what age, what physical issues. Jiu-Jitsu is so abundant right now. It behooves you to check out a bunch of different places and make sure you find the right coach, right? Like the coach has to you have to connect with that coach in a way that you're going to feel safe stepping onto their mat and doing jiu-jitsu. I think that's really the only feasible answer for somebody who's got concerns about being able to keep up or being able to stay safe or being able to not get hurt. Like, you have to find the right coach, and not every coach is right for everybody. I'm not right for everybody, you know. There are people that want things that I can't provide, or maybe don't connect with the way I teach, and that's fine. You know, that's why there's other schools around. So I just think you have to find the right coach and the right environment. You know, if I say a couple different things, like I think if you're checking out a school and there are women in leadership positions in that school, that's typically going to be a good sign that you're at a safe school, right? And then if there's people your age at the school, if you're 40, 50, 60, and there's other students your age at that school, that's another good sign, right? And they're not just all white belts, right? People who've stuck with it to get some experience, you know. You go and see a room full of 50-year-old white belts, you might go in 3 weeks later, it might be another room full of different people, right? So those are signs that I think that the training environment is probably going to be safe for you. And then you got to be able to watch a class. I don't trust any school that says, no, you can't observe, you know, you have to sign the waiver and pay a drop-in fee or whatever. I don't know many schools that do that anymore.
I was about to ask, actually, people do that?
I ran into one when I was a purple belt, when I was traveling and I wanted to train somewhere.
Yeah. It is interesting how things have changed in the last decade as far as jiu-jitsu operational stuff in the academies. And I think we are really getting smarter and more mature in some ways and building the safer environment than you and I have experienced.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh man.
Those war stories are fun to tell, but I certainly don't want to go through them anymore.
Oh no. I publicly say it. If I had to go through it again, I don't know if I would. Like, I was too stupid to quit. Like, in my opinion, and don't take me wrong, it wasn't that bad, but it was bad. Like, it was very different. That's how it was. The expectations were different and deliverables were different.
Right.
So we talked about several pivot points and milestones in your jiu-jitsu journey, and I think one that we can't ignore as we kind of creeping into towards the end of this conversation is your black belt. Chris Howder, huh?
Yes, sir.
Chris Howder. That had to feel great. I mean, Chris is one of the OGs. I mean, like, true OGs. Like, Dirty doesn't. I mean, like, it I don't know. Like, when I had him on the show, like, I was drooling. Like, this is one of those guys that he has so many stories and experienced so much, and most of it is untold, probably because it's in his head, and he takes it for granted. Like, I remember talking to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, this and this happened." I was like, "Dude, like, what do you mean this and this happened? This is like pivotal story of the history." But anyway, getting back to you, do you know it's coming, or is it a complete surprise?
It was kind of a surprise. Yeah, it was. So it was at a seminar. He came to Magic BJJ to do a seminar, and we'd been under him for several years. You know, like a lot of different schools in our early days, we swapped affiliations, trying to find the right fit for us, you know. And my buddy Matt got his black belt 3 years before I did. So he got his in 2015. I got mine in 2018. And so Matt was already a black belt. We had Chris out for a seminar. I don't know if your school does stripes, but we do stripes. And so I had 3 stripes on my brown belt. And I remember, at the end of that seminar, I knew Matt had a bunch of promotions to do, right? Because I was one of we have this group of people we joke about, call us the cellar dwellers. We were the maybe half a dozen folks that were in Matt's basement before Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu even existed as a school, right? So there's still a few. So, I was still on like the inner circle. Like, so I knew he had a bunch of promotions he wanted to do of some of the other colored belts and all that. And so he does those promotions, and we're all lined up at the end of the seminar, and my name gets called up, and Matt's got like a roll of tape out. I'm like, sweet. I said, okay, I'm going to get my 4th stripe. That's pretty awesome. Next comes the black belt, right? So he goes to put one piece of tape on and fumbles it up. It gets all, so he throws it away. Goes to put another piece of tape on and fumbles it up and throws it away. And at that time I knew there was something going on. And then he reached in his gi and brought out the black belt. And then I realized that my wife and daughters had shown up. I was seeing the corner of my eye. They slipped into the side door of the gym. Like, oh, they all knew this.
You were set up. Here
I was. Yeah. Apparently Amy, Matt's wife, had called my wife, Teresa, and been like, okay, this is what we're doing. Can you guys make it?
So what goes through your mind? Talk about creativity. I've seen different ways of black belts being rewarded, some creative ways, but I've never heard of that one. Maybe I'll put this in my pocket one day. Who knows?
I know, you should. It's a good. So Matt's really good at surprising people.
So black belt comes out. At which point it hits you? This is for you. At which point it hits you? This is happening, and Chris Howder is right there. Like it has to be a lot of emotions surrounding this.
I was pretty shocked.
Why?
I mean, I think like everybody, I didn't think I was ready. Like, I
Why
wanted
not?
it.
Why not? Why not? You've been grinding this for years.
So I'm going to give you and all your listeners a little peek into some of my self-doubt here, right?
Okay.
Okay. I still had in my head this idea that I had to be some sort of amazing fighter to be a black belt. And that thought haunted me for a while even after getting black belt. Like, I still love to compete, and I do that as much as my body allows, but I don't think I've ever been in jiu-jitsu, at least, I've never been a great competitor. I've been an okay competitor, right? And so much of that was creeping into my mind, getting that black belt around my waist. I was like, am I even there? Like, am I even, can I even perform jiu-jitsu well enough? Can I even roll well enough to merit this? And like, I've since then, 6.5 years ago, I've gotten older and I've gotten wiser, and I don't care about that anymore. Like, I think you have to be able to perform on some level to be a black belt, but like, age is a real thing, and like.
Let me ask you this. Why we don't question the brown belt? Why we don't question the purple? And even if we do, it doesn't happen to the extent you're explaining right now. And I think this is a very common thing. Like, I've had 200 plus guests on the show, and anytime this conversation comes up, most of them say, I'm not ready. Oh my God, I don't know why he did that. Like, can I have one more year? Like, I have so many things I have to check off my list. Like, why this is happening? But rarely anybody is questioning to that level any of the previous ranks. Why do we trust our instructors with color ranks, but yet we have so much self-doubt when it comes to that black belt?
I mean, I think we've built up this myth as to what a black belt means. And
is it?
I think so. I think we carry, and some of this I think is drawn from my other martial arts experience too. Like
Mhm.
there's this huge mythology, I think,
Mhm.
around what it means to be a black belt. And, you know, I even struggled with it when I first got, I struggled with it when I first got promoted, even knowing that it's all BS, right? Like this
Mhm.
fact that a black belt is an unbeatable grappling machine, right? The best thing that could have happened to me happened the next day.
Oh, what happened
After the
next
seminar, I got tapped out by a white belt.
day? Oh, all right. Walk me through this.
So I come in to open. We have open mat on a Sunday, right?
And by the
Seminars
way,
on.
all of the white belts and all the color belts, just tune in right now. Put your phones down. This is going to get good. This is a good. I think this is a good story.
Yeah. Well, so we had this guy. I was a youth mentor for a few years, and one of my mentees was this young guy named Rushan, who was paired up with me because he was really interested in learning jiu-jitsu. He was like 17 when we first started, when I first took him on as a mentor. And so we like adopted him at the academy. Like he trained for free, and he was super athletic. He was like 18, I think, by the time this story happened, but he was super athletic, very focused, trained like an 18-year-old madman, right? Nicest kid in the world, super nice kid. And he had focused so hard on the Kimura trap, right? Like that was his jam. He trained that incessantly, and he was way better at it than I ever was, right? And so I walk into open mat the next day after the promotion and strap on my black belt, and I'm doing some rolling and just kind of enjoying, basking in the awe that I now got my black belt. And Drushan is like, hey Mike, you wanna roll? I was like, yeah, sure. So we start rolling, and I'm like, I'm a black belt now. I'm not going to go super hard. I'm going to let him do this, let him do that. Next thing you know, I'm in that Kimura trap. And there is no way I'm getting out. Yeah. No way whatsoever. And he takes my back from it. And next thing you know, that collar's around my neck and I've got a tap. And God love him. Like, I haven't seen him now in quite a while. Every now and then I run into him. He's an adult now. Every now and then I run into him around town and say hi or whatever. But God love the kid. Like his attitude was so cool. I was like, Drew, that was great. So that was really good. He goes, oh yeah, thanks, Mike. I've been working on it. Good job yourself. Nice roll. Congrats on your black belt. Yeah.
Like nothing ever happened. Just another day in the office.
Right. And I was just like, okay. So I just got tapped out by a white belt. Who freaking cares? Who cares?
But look, so where's this open-minded attitude come from, Mike? I mean, so many people would be like, oh no, he tapped a black belt. Oh, this guy, like, it could go a million different ways how people, what the interpretation could be of this event. And both of you guys are like, no, okay, good for you. Hey, listen, hey, no, I've been working on it. Not a big deal. Like, where is this very chilled back and, in some ways, I gotta say, mature approach to training comes from?
Otherwise, I'm gonna quit, man.
Is that what it is?
I mean, I've been there. Like back in the day, and I mean, like mid 2000s, first blue purple ish belt. I ran across a lot of people with the exact opposite attitude, like my students, my purple belts don't get tapped by my blue belts, and my brown belts don't get tapped by my purple belts. Mm-hmm. And, and I remember being a mid to late 30s blue belt, hungry for that purple, right? Not able to keep up with the 22-year-olds, right? And feeling really demoralized by that. And, being around some of that attitude, right? Not necessarily at Magic, not necessarily at our school, but, just the general vibe in the Midwest Jiu-Jitsu community at the time, at least what I was perceiving. It may or may not have been that, but those were the messages that I was hearing and then holding on to. And it was a miserable time. Like the joy of jiu-jitsu was getting sucked out of me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I had to make a very conscious decision. Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like who taps who in the training gym doesn't matter, not that you shouldn't try, or not that you shouldn't, like, play your A game when it's time to play your A game, or not that you shouldn't be focused on improving, but like the day-to-day ups and downs can't dictate your attitude toward training, or else you're just going to quit.
Is that part of the Old Bastard Jiu-Jitsu?
Yes, 100%. Especially as we get older, man. Like, I don't know about you, but I got some 22-year-old blue belts who give me hell at Magic.
Wow. I feel like there's a target on my back all the time.
I know. I know.
But that's a good thing. In some ways, that's a good thing, isn't it, Mike? Like, we want these guys to be good. We just want them to be respectful. We want them to be healthy, and we want them to be safe. But these young guys should be hunting things in some aspects, right? I mean, that's part of the jiu-jitsu. That's what we do, right?
Yes. So when I get caught by any of our students, I'm like, great job. That's awesome, right?
Yeah.
I mean, good for them. They should be, and they should enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, this is the beautiful part of jiu-jitsu, and then we take a sip of water and we're coming after them, right? There is a whooping.
Right, exactly. Don't let me get on top of you.
Yeah, and then we remind ourselves that we are in our 40s or 50s, and it's like, you got to slow down. You're not
right.
There's this whole process that needs to take, right?
Right. I mean, I feel like if I can't get the results I want by going slow and methodical, if I have to speed up or use strength or speed or any of those attributes to an excess, then I'm not doing it right. Then I've got to refine what I'm doing.
Yeah. I believe I had Roy Dean here, and he was saying that speed and power are the additional attributes of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu should be done without those two. Now, if you add them on top of it, now it's even more, even better. Now you're adding these extra things on top, but view it as it's something that should be mechanical, something that really you should use things like leverage, gravity, balance, and distance control to manipulate the situation to your advantage.
Yes, sir.
There's some truth behind that, I suppose. Mike, before we start wrapping this up, what I do at the end of every episode, and you probably know that already, but I have a question for you from our previous guest. And
yes, sir.
She had no clue that you will be answering the question. Amanda Bruse was on the previous episode, and she asked, if you haven't found jiu-jitsu at all, zero, where would you be in your life? So let's just go back. I'm going to change this a little bit for the entertainment purposes, okay? The day you walk into the Jiu-Jitsu Academy and your eyes open up, they lit up, and let's just say your skills are proven to be less than desired in order to handle the situation. And you say, screw it, I'm not doing this. I'm going to go back to my striking. Only striking is superior. I'm going to work on that. I'm not engaging in any of this. Or perhaps you're watching the UFC 1 and saying, this is all nonsense. This is fake. None of this is real. I'm going to stick with my stuff. And you never, ever engage in jiu-jitsu. Where is Mike today?
That's a good question. Before I answer that, I want to say it's pretty funny that Amanda was the one that asked that, because I was just chatting with her earlier today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm going to message her because I'll message her. That's funny. That's funny.
We were just having a chat over Instagram about some things. And I'm going to message her when we're done too and be like, your question is too hard for me.
That's funny. What a small world. Look at that.
I know, right?
Awesome.
So
don't try to avoid the question, okay?
Darn it, you found me out. So if I walked into there and I said, no way, this stuff is crap, I'm not going to do it, I honestly might not be training anything anymore, to be honest. Because, of all those health issues I'd had, I don't do striking anymore because my joints just don't, like, all the torque from, being on your feet and kicking and punching and driving your hip into, for power and everything. Like, I don't do it. And so if I hadn't found jiu-jitsu, if I hadn't stuck with it, I probably wouldn't be training any martial arts right now, which would be sad for me. It'd be a huge part of my identity that I'd be missing. Like, judo's too, I don't do judo. I tried judo a few years ago because we have a judo program at our school, and it's awesome, but I can't take all the getting thrown,
Yeah.
It's too hard on my body. It's not sustainable. So yeah, I'd probably not be training at all. I'd probably be a depressed wreck. To be honest, I'd be missing out on a huge aspect of not only my identity, but my social circle. My social circle is almost all jiu-jitsu people.
Speaking of that, let me ask you this. Do you know anybody outside of jiu-jitsu?
One or two. People at my job, I'm friends, but they're always like, my boss said in a staff meeting the other day, you're not going to mention anything about jiu-jitsu in this meeting? You sure?
You set standards pretty high. I mean, well, there you go. If your employer is throwing that at you, then I mean, what else is there to say? I mean,
right. Exactly.
So I assume everybody at work knows you do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, we have a fitness center in our building with a padded floor,
Mm-hmm.
and
is that where meeting negotiations takes place?
Exactly. That's where my annual review happens. And I used to do some training with another guy, the same guy who introduced me, Scott Hahn, the same guy who introduced me to that gym all those years ago, ended up working at the same company as me. Again.
Are you kidding me? Seriously?
No.
Wow.
Yeah. And
what a small world, huh?
I know. And so him and I would get together and train during our lunch hours because we had that fitness center. Yeah. So people would walk by and see like two grown men in pajamas rolling around on the floor during lunch.
You're those guys.
We were those guys. Yeah.
Oh, what a fun time, Mike. If anybody wants to connect with you, Mike, before we wrap this up, like, are you open to conversations on Instagram or social media or websites? Where can guys find you? And I know you don't answer any questions if somebody is younger than 30 years old. I know that. That's a steel rule there. It's only for old bastards, right? But
I need proof of age. I need proof of age. I shouldn't even be talking to Amanda Bruse.
I know. What are you doing?
I know. Young lady, you are not old enough to speak to me.
Where are you, Mike? Where can people connect with you?
Old Bastard BJJ on Instagram. You can email me at oldbastardbjj@gmail.com. I'm open so you'll find me at a camp, BJJ Mental Models Camp in April at Rough Hands Jiu-Jitsu in Louisville. I'm hoping to get some seminars going, so you can always reach out to me. I'm planning some with our mutual friend Josh McKinney.
Oh, yeah.
And planning some with my friend Jesse Walker, who owns Rough Hands down in Louisville. So if people want to reach out to me, want to ask questions, want to get to know me better, want to come train, whatever, just hit me up. I'm more than happy. This journey, this whole thing is taking me by surprise over the past couple of years, and I'm just riding the wave and seeing what happens. It's a good time.
At the beginning of this conversation, you said that you never thought that you would be at the place where you are today because of this jiu-jitsu stuff. Like, you never anticipated this. This is complete, unknown territory in a sense This was never planned. This was never a goal. Looking in a retrospect, appreciation, regrets, thoughts?
Oh, gratefulness.
Gratefulness.
Just completely grateful for all of this. It happened so... I mean, it happened organically. And then, of course, once it started to happen, I put some effort into, being more out there and to taking advantage of these opportunities with jiu-jitsu. But it happened so organically that I can't help but be anything but grateful. And if after this conversation, people listen to this and go, oh, that Mike Mahaffey, I don't ever want to hear from him again. I don't care. That's fine, because I've had a hell of a time.
Well, good for you. That speaks a lot to your confidence and to, the experience that you have in your life. And I do appreciate you sharing that. And I do appreciate you being vulnerable and really having this pretty amazing conversation. And I tell my kids, the gray on my beard is pure wisdom. So if I look at you, you are, just mind-blowing. That's how I look at this.
Can you tell that to my wife?
It'll be my pleasure. Matter of fact, I'm recording with her next episode because I want to cross-reference their fat checks.
Excellent. Perfect. She didn't tell me that, so
it's all by design. It's all about surprises. Your black belt came as a surprise. This is coming as a surprise, Mike. You're in for a ride, okay?
Exactly. Oh, that's perfect, man. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Mike, thanks for being here. Thanks for spending, almost hour and a half. Look at that. Time flies when we're having fun. But I really, truly appreciate you making time for me and having this conversation. And most importantly, really, truly sharing the jiu-jitsu journey with everybody out there, because I think we need more people like you. We need more people in a positive mindset and really looking forward versus looking behind and, making the best out of this ride that we have. And we all got limited time, and it is what it is. Let's have a blast at it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Let's wrap this up for today.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.